Moving on to video gaming.
Consideration and discussion of rescinding Ordinance 6442, prohibiting video gaming within the Village of Lombard.
Okay, we've got quite a few folks who would like to speak. And again, when you get up to the podium, please state your name and address for the record. Ken Wojcik.
Speaking twice.
Ken Wojcik, 128 South 3rd Avenue, Lombard, Illinois. I would ask the board not to change the current policy and to not support gaming in our village. I have sort of an unusual background. I work as a professional musician. When we started looking at gambling in the state of Illinois, I worked with the Chicago Federation of Musicians and worked very hard to get the gambling bill passed here in our state. It was a mistake. I profited from it by working for the casinos. I worked for Harrah's, I worked for Showboat Casino, and I worked at the back of the house. And ladies and gentlemen, gaming is not what you think. It's an illusion in the front, and in the back of the house, they'll clean your clock. We can, in that capacity, gaming can mine you like a vein of gold. That's the business. That's how they've built all those casinos, and to bring that to our village is improper. I don't want it in our community. And I know we have businessmen here who would like to add it. They feel it'll bring an advantage to your business. And I say to you, in that was in that business and that I've walked away from it, it will change your business. It'll change where your income comes from. You're going to be selling gambling. And when I was fighting for it, what I was hearing from the opponents is that it's a tax on the poor. And I laughed. I said, no, it's not. It's entertainment. I'm in the entertainment business, and it is a tax on the poor. I had a man come up to me when we were performing, and we were on break, and he walked up to me. He knew I was a musician, knew that I was with the casino. He said, Ken, put your hand out. I said, okay. I put my hand out, and he put a dime in my hand. He said, you've taken everything else. You might as well take the last dime and give it to the casino. So I want you to consider that as we bring this possibility to our village. And I ask you to not support gaming. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Gilroy?
Good evening. Kathy Gilroy, 230 West Division, Villa Park. As a 15-year Lombard resident, I sympathize with the difficulty of making a decision that could help some businesses at the risk of tarnishing Lombard's future forever. Consider the ABCs of convenience gambling, which include addictions, bankruptcies, crime, corruption, child abuse, divorces, embezzlements, homelessness, poverty, and suicides. Anyone who is so desperate to gamble that they abandon their favorite local bar, pizza parlor, or club to find a place to gamble is already going to a casino with 1,000 slot machines to choose from, a racetrack with live action, or one of many off-track betting parlors. With all of those choices, they are not driving to Addison or Villa Park to see if a tavern slots are unoccupied by their customers, unless they are already addicted to gambling. A Plainfield trustee told a restaurant owner who claimed his business would go under without slots to, quote, get a new chef, unquote. before Plainville voted to maintain their ban of slots. A business that needs gambling to survive is a failing business. Despite desperate pleas from some of their businesses, Woodridge recently voted to maintain their ban because reversing it would not benefit the entire community. Convenience gambling seduces your neighbors, those who would not gamble otherwise. No one is born an addicted gambler, yet over 10,000 people have volunteered to be arrested if they are caught in an Illinois casino. They do not have that safeguard at neighborhood mini casinos. In other states that have had convenience gambling a while, mini casinos attract addicted gamblers, drug dealing, and crime. Lombard mini casinos would not have the safeguards of casinos, such as turnstile entry, cameras everywhere, ID checks, state police presence at all times, and parking lot patrols. Convenience gambling is still in the honeymoon phase in Illinois. Consider South Carolina, which recriminalized convenience gambling after 10 years of combating the crime and dealing with the social costs. Gambling pushers compare slots to smoking and alcohol, but they don't mention that those addictive activities are allowed in only certain places. Smoking is legal. Do you allow it in this room? Alcohol is legal. Do you allow it as we're driving home? Yes, slots are legal, but unlike the lottery, you can decide whether you want the most addictive form of gambling in Lombard pizza parlors and family businesses. Your survey of businesses shows no demand in Lombard for gambling. Where is the survey of Lombard residents on whether they are okay with Lombard children becoming attracted to gambling in Lombard restaurants and bowling alleys and being blinded by gambling advertising everywhere in Lombard? If you reverse your ban of slots, Lombard would give up all control of them to the state of Illinois. A bill has already been introduced to increase the number of slots from 5 to 10 at Illinois truck stops. After the 10th and last casino opened, the state has been trying to double the number of casinos allowed. If the state legalized it, and easily could, reversing your ban could allow slots in Lombard gas stations and grocery stores, as Iowa once had, before Iowans demanded their removal. Illinois towns that allow slots are being inundated with liquor license applications from out-of-towners and their hole-in-the-wall mini casinos. Many of those towns are now trying to enact restrictions to keep out out-of-towners. 2 lawsuits have been filed by gambling pushers against those restrictions. Do you want to subject Lombard to those ordeals? Yesterday, the Gaming Board announced that with 16,642 slots, Illinois is now the largest convenience gambling jurisdiction in the country. In 18 short months, Illinois gamblers have lost some $450 million in them. Burglars have heard the news and broken into slots in an Oak Lawn flower shop, in a North Lake hot dog business on North Avenue, in a bar and an Eagles Club in Franklin County, and in truck stops in Sangamon and McLean counties. Consider the folly of inviting one-armed or two-armed bandits to Lombard. Consider Lombardians who would become the losers, many of whom would resort to crime to fund a gambling addiction. Consider the unfairness to Lombard businesses without slots that would lose revenue to Lombard businesses with slots. And consider the harm of inviting new competition for Lombard bars. On this National Day of Prayer, I pray that you don't judge this pestilence only by its still rosy honeymoon phase, and that you continue to ban slots from Lombard as Downers Grove, Glen Ellen, Lisle, Naperville, Wheaton, and Winfield have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary May Meyer.
Good evening. I'm Mary May Meyer, 414 West Windsor Avenue in Lombard. You may view my comments as coming from a stodgy old lady with different values, and that's just fine. I'm proud to have gotten this old, and I've earned it. I'd like to speak from the perspective of anyone whose lives have been negatively altered by addiction of any kind, but specifically that of gambling. Many Lombardians have worked long and hard to achieve the distinctness of our Lilac Village. Our village's vision statement says, "Our shared vision for Lombard is a community of excellence, exemplified by its government working together with residents and businesses to create a distinctive sense of spirit and an outstanding quality of life." And I'm keenly aware that of the businesses that need to find ways of increasing revenue. But it does come at an expense when it comes to gambling, and it costs somebody down the line, whether it's money or emotion. There's a cost to it. Jay Wojcik has gone a long way to establish a healthy Lombard. We have an award-winning park district full of wholesome entertainment, suitable for audiences of all ages, and it doesn't require fine print disclaimers. I appeal to your moral values. I see on this board highly intelligent people. I've voted for you guys. And I know that you are smart enough to find a different way to help these business owners to add to their revenue without tapping into the guy's last dime and ruining some kid's life because daddy spent it all. I ask you to leave is it an ordinance that we're talking about? Please leave it stand as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary May. Tom Campos?
My name is Tom Campos. I'm the governor at the Lombard Moose Lodge, 328 West Roosevelt. I also live at 149 North Park here in Lombard. The Lombard Moose Lodge has been located in Lombard for the last 25 years. We are a not-for-profit fraternal lodge dedicated to being a part of the community. Every year we try to set aside money donations for the Lombard Fire Department, the Lombard Police Department. We volunteer at the Taste. Our biggest contribution of money goes for the education, housing, and care of the children at Moose Heart, our retired folks at Moose Haven in Florida. The gaming machines help us threefold: more monies for the children and retirees and our local community, the ability to stay competitive with other local communities who already have the machines and other lodges who have them as well. Economically, as costs continue to rise and additional income will benefit the state, the Village of Lombard, and our Moose Lodge. Lastly, I know that the three previous folks that came up and talked about how people can get corrupt. I've been to a number of the Moose Lodges that already have the gaming machines. They are roped off or put in separate rooms. They have the option of walking by. Everybody has that option, okay? If you want to be put into it, I mean, that's totally up to you. Like one of the young ladies said, we're not born gamblers, but we all make a choice. We all have a choice. And we think that benefiting the children of Mooseheart, which is most important to us, would help us tremendously. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next would be Stafa Amin.
Good evening, guys. My name is Stafa Amin. I'm a managing partner at Overtime Bar and Grill, and our corporation also owns the OTB Crazy Pour in Villa Park. And the comments that were made tonight, they're not true. We got gambling back in September. Ever since then, we were afraid of what kind of people it's going to bring. It's not bringing bad people in. We have a Wednesday. During the day, there's 25 women that come in every Wednesday for lunch. Some of them have martinis, some of them have pop. But that's another source of revenue that we're generating besides the gambling. And these girls, these women are not gamblers. They come in, they have a good time. And they've been doing it for the past 5 weeks, and I see their faces, they're laughing, they're having a good time. Some of them win, but they're not losing hundreds of dollars. They're putting in 20, 10, but they're having a good time for a couple hours at a time. All these comments, at first, when we didn't have gaming, I wasn't sure if I was going to be for the video gambling at Overtime. But ever since we had it at the OTB, I have changed my decision, and I'm up for it. Not only for the revenue, but it does make us employ more people because we're going to get busier. And it does bring more revenue for the village, not only for the gaming, but food and beverages also. So please consider it for the business owners, for people that just like to go out $10, $15 and have a great time for a couple hours at a time. Thank you.
Thank you. This next one, I know I'm going to screw up the last name. Aldo Toli?
Yes, I waive my right.
Okay. Thank you. Robert Taglia?
Good evening, President Gennaro, Madam Clerk, and Village Trustees. My name is Robert Taglia. I come here tonight from the Village of Villa Park. I'm a second-term trustee in Villa Park. I just want to bring you some factual information. Video gaming was passed in Villa Park over a year ago. And to this day, the number one topic with gambling is money. As of January 14th, the current numbers I have, the Village of Villa Park has taken in $11,036 in gaming tax fees. We have 53 liquor licenses in Villa Park, which gives us the possibility of having 265 gambling machines. Just something to consider. Something that we didn't see going into video gaming was the enforcement piece of this legislation. The gaming board comes in and does sting operations. If a gaming machine is left unattended, the bartender goes out for a cigarette or whatever, they levy fines up to $5,000 per incident with the possibility of losing your liquor license and your gaming license. So these are very serious issues that our owners are coming to realize, something to keep in mind. Also, as some of your business members have said, they are changing gambling. They're trying to repackage it as being more family-oriented. We have a new gaming establishment in Villa Park that caters to housewives. Instead of just a traditional bar, it's more like a cafe-style gambling establishment. Oftentimes, we look to Lombard as an example of what we should do better. One of the finest human beings I know, and we have on staff now, came from Lombard. His name is Ron Rakosnik. He's our fire chief. I know that it's a very difficult decision to make, and you have my compassion, the board. I know it's a tough spot to be in. And I know for the business owners it's a tough spot to be in. But having experienced this and having to live with the decision, I'd invite all of you to come to Villa Park and take a look. Decide, is that what you want in your town? And is it worth it? I told you so far, what I know is we've gotten $11,000 out of the deal. To me, is it worth it? It's a question you should be asking. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. David? Ludus? Lutz. I had it right the first time.
David Lutz, 681 North Martha Street, Lombard. I have more of a comment and a question combined. I do oppose changing the ordinance, but I'm wondering how the trustees make their decision on their vote. I heard a mention of a survey earlier, but I don't know if you've surveyed the people you represent or if you make it on a moral basis or an economic basis. So if we could learn something more about that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Antonio, help me with the, George. Tony. Topalitis. I just call him George, so. It's easier that way.
It's Tony for short.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. President, ladies, gentlemen, trustees. I'm here to ask to support to change the ordinance to allow the video gaming to come to Lombard. I have a business. My name is Antonio Stopalidis, by the way, at 352 East Roosevelt. And the reason I'm saying that is only 5 minutes away, like the gentleman spoke earlier from Villa Park, my customers just drive 5 minutes and go to a bunch of locations in Villa Park and Oakbrook Terrace to spend their money there. Why Lombard will lose and we will lose the dollars? It's not like they're going to have to drive 2 hours, 3 hours, fly a day, or go to Vegas. It's only down the street. They don't play it at our establishments. They just go down the street and play it. It's the same people. I have a literature here from one of the places that they sent the flyer here to all the residents in Villa Park, in Lombard. And they advertise to go to Villa Park to spend their money there. Why not we have the opportunity to get that? And in turn, we can do better in art establishments and make upgrade our businesses, and whatever the revenue that will come there, it will come and we will stay in business. Why give it to other establishments that are down the street? They're not in Lombard. I want you guys to consider that passing and changing the law to allow the video gaming in our town. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Joe Schrantz?
Good evening, and honorable people up here, honorable board members. My name is Joe Schrantz. I live in Villa Park. I'd like to speak against allowing video gambling in bars and taverns. The main reason is that alcoholic beverages tend to relax one's inhibitions. Consequently, as evening progresses, one would tend to spend more and more on video gambling and possibly spend much more than one's budget allows. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Capone? That's the last one.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dawn Capone. I own Capone's Restaurant in downtown Lombard. This is my 20th year in business. We had a business for 14 years in Bloomingdale, and I would like to ask you to please consider having the gambling. I think it'll be wonderful. We have a lot of customers that ask all the time for it, and I don't think it's going to make bad people come to Lombard because they're gambling. People have a choice what they want to do. If they want to gamble, they're going to gamble, whether it's here or not. And I think if it's here, they'll spend more money at our business. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay. Okay, at this time, I know this is a very sensitive issue, obviously, so I'm going to throw it out here to the board members. I'll throw it to Trustee Ware. I know that you were initiated.
Unless anybody has any specific questions from the memos that might benefit the audience or the board members.
Oh, yeah. We could ask them while we're talking, too. I don't know if that's...
Did you want to give a brief update or history on this?
First off, I'd comment that every Lombardian and Villa Park resident and other people that spoke tonight, I think, spoke very intelligently and had a lot of good things to say. I'll just hit a couple of high notes for the benefit of the audience and the board members from a memo that I prepared for the village board in late January. Some key ones to note, as far as the revenue distribution, out of the 100% of the revenue, 35% would go to the business owner. 35% of the revenue goes to the people that own the terminals or the machines. 25% of the revenue goes to the state of Illinois, and 5% of the revenue goes to the local government, in this case, the village of Lombard. Factually speaking, video gaming is only allowed in locations where alcohol is provided for consumption on premises. In Lombard, at the time we counted this in January, there were 62 locations. The maximum number of machines in any establishment is 5, as the law currently stands right now. As was mentioned by many people in here, the video games, the poker and slots need to be separated physically and restricted to people the age of 21 and over. And at the time we put the information together, there were over 13,000 gaming terminals within the state of Illinois. The average amount that is generated to the municipality per machine per month is roughly $140. As a non-home rule community, the village of Lombard can only charge $25 per machine. We put a rough estimate on this, assuming a minor number of 15 locations would do it, and if they maxed out at 5 machines per, approximately $125,000 in revenue. If each of them averaged 3 machines, it'd be about $75,000 in revenue. And with regard to gas stations and truck stop terminals, there are none of those in Lombard which qualify. They need to be at least 3 acres in size, and we don't have any locations that fit that description.
Okay, I now would like to ask Chief Byrne just to give us a little bit of information on your end of the gambling.
Sure. Thank you, President Gianorio. When this item first became known as a possible discussion item, Manager Niehaus tasked me with reaching out to communities in the area that do allow for video gaming to decide or to determine if there's any problems associated with it. What we did is we reached out to 9 communities in DuPage County that have had video gaming since 2012. And specifically from a policing standpoint, what we're looking for is, have you seen increased calls for service? Have you seen an increase in criminal activity? And what, if any, impact has video gaming had on the police department? We reached out to Villa Park, has been mentioned here already, Addison, Bartlett, Glendale Heights, Oakbrook Terrace, Westmont, Hanover Park, Wooddale, and Bensonville. After speaking with my colleagues in all 9 of those communities, They consistently stated across the board that since video gaming first came to their communities in 2012, they have had no increases in calls for service. They have had no increase in criminal activity associated with video gaming. And to put it in generalities, there's been no impact to the police departments in these communities because of video gaming. A couple of the communities have adopted their own home rule ordinances to do two things. One, they can charge a higher licensing fee than the $25 authorized by statute. And number two, they could do their own inspections if they chose to. The majority of the communities simply rely on the state of Illinois to do the regulatory inspections. I'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
Thank you, Chief. Tom, did you have?
Well, just to follow up on the licensing, the primary licensing of these establishments is done by the state of Illinois through the Illinois Gaming Board. When Lombard would issue a license, if you chose to enter into, if you got rid of the existing ordinance, you would need to repeal it pursuant to an ordinance. And then you would have to decide whether or not, if you did that, whether you would amend the village code to add a license fee of up to $25 per terminal as a non-home rule municipality. That license fee doesn't require any inspections, and in essence, the true licensing is through the state of Illinois. They are the ones that are going to be handling the applications for all of the licensed entities at each phase of whether they're providing the terminal or they're the establishment. All of those licenses are issued by the state of Illinois through the Gaming Board. There is a number of criteria the Gaming Board uses for those evaluations, and as was said earlier, the Gaming Board will do sting operations. The village, if it did repeal the ban, does not lose its right to enforce gambling ordinances within the village of Lombard. Both the state ordinances as well as your local ordinance against illegal gambling. Also, if illegal gambling was taking place at one of these establishments, because they do hold a liquor license, the village retains the right to hold a hearing with the local liquor commissioner if a violation occurred, and the license can be suspended or revoked as a result of that violation. If a license is revoked, one of the criteria for a video gaming license, which is you have to have a liquor license, and that liquor license has to allow you to serve liquor to the public on the premises, not just a packaged good license. Once that license is lost, the State Liquor Commission and the Gaming Board would be notified, and the state liquor license would be repealed, and the gaming ability of that location would be repealed because they could not meet the criteria. The other aspect that I wanted to point out was if the board does decide to repeal, the board always has the right to reinstitute the ban at any time. And in that regard, one of the things that I had sent to the village manager, and I know he circulated it, was the statement that the applicants acknowledge on their applications with the state is that they understand that this is not a property right but a personal privilege, and they acknowledge that if it's in unincorporated, the county has the right. If it's in incorporated, the municipality has the right at any time to reinstitute the video gaming ban. If that were to occur, the licenses then at that point in time are void, and the gaming devices have to be removed immediately. And I believe those are the items that I wanted to highlight, but it does take an ordinance to amend this. It's not merely just a motion, and that would have to come before you at a future meeting.
Thank you, Tom. I'd like to throw it over to Trustee Ware at this time and just make a few comments on why you brought this item back.
Thank you, President Gennario and the board. First of all, I do want to thank the board for bringing this back up and discussing it. I believe that it is something crucial for now and the future to be discussed. I understand that 3-4 years ago when this board took a look at video gambling, that we didn't proceed with it. I understand it back then. There was no mechanisms in place. There was no history data. There was no processes in place. But now, as we can clearly tell by the village manager, thank you, and our attorney, that there is a process is in place. This is now set and governed by the Illinois Gaming Board. And thank you to the chief. There is no history of any criminal activity, no history of any criminal activity coming into town. And then furthermore, it has in the last even 6 months, a number of business owners, and thank you for some coming tonight to talk, have been approaching me by other towns are getting this. We aren't. How do we get on a level playing field with these other businesses? Businesses came to me asking to talk about it. I believe it would be remiss of me not to bring this forward to talk about it. So that is one of the reasons why, and coupled with the other things that I brought up, and I did bring forward. And so the last 90 days, I've been asking the village manager to get us data. Thank you. I've been doing my own polling of residents, neighbors, family members, in town, out of town, stuff like that. I understand. I've even been getting calls from the churches and some of the neighbors, some for it, some against it. Okay? I understand that. And I understand the family aspect and what it might mean to the family and how it might impact that if he's going to go broke or she's going to go broke because she's going to gamble too much. As I think I heard someone earlier, it's $10, $15, and most time that's about right. And then I started thinking, if you really think about this deep down, and I'm sorry, I'm going to put back on my glass and make some notes here, that we have already a number of existing formats in town through lottery instant gaming, office pools, internet gambling, and even church raffles, Vegas night over at Sacred Heart. We already have the gambling. So if we do consider this, now this would allow them to be back on an even playing field. And I think as our manager, Scott Niehaus, indicated earlier, there's about 60 possible machines, okay? If we have 15 of them say that, get this, that's approximately 25% of the 60, okay, that would have it. That leaves 75% of the rest of the bars, restaurants in town that will not have it, that if you are a family that don't want to have that, I understand that. We're not pushing this on you. We're not even pushing it on the business owner. It's up to them if they want to get it. But that would give you 75% of the other establishments in town that might not have it. You can go visit them. So there's plenty out there. And I think approximately 16 of the 34 current towns in Lombard have this. So it goes back to one of my initial thoughts. We have to put our businesses on an even playing field with the other businesses for now and also in the future. If we're entertaining a business that's going to take a look at us or Villa Park, okay, since Villa Park was here, thank you, and they're going to take a look at us or Villa Park, okay, well, they might consider that video gaming as an option. And keep in mind, this additional revenue that businesses might get means revenue put back into the business, back into the infrastructure. These businesses can grow the business and create a better place for their establishment. And I think I will hold off on the rest of my comments for now. Thank you, President Genario, and thank you to the board.
Thank you, Trustee Ware. Trustee Breen?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just this week, Gallup released a poll showing that half of all Illinoisans want to move to another state. Half of them. Hopefully not anyone in this room.
Lower than I thought.
Well, Ed, we all know that folks aren't happy about the way things are going in our state, and depending on your measure, we're the most corrupt and bankrupt state in the union. However, tonight we're asked to change the law in Lombard to allow video slot machines at every restaurant and bar that serves alcohol in town. This is not the recipe for bringing jobs back to Illinois and keeping folks here in the land of Lincoln. Mary May alluded to the recipe. It's helping businesses get their inspections done quickly, reducing unnecessary government regulations, and keeping our community a safe and family-friendly place for people to move into and to live. Now, some would say that these slot machines will bring money into the village of Lombard, but again, we've heard tonight the average revenue is $140 a month. $140. It's only a very small amount of money that could ever possibly come to the village from these machines. As well, this is bad policy, because what it does is pits the village against the people. The only way we make any money off of these machines is if our residents lose money. In other words, directly pitting the village board against the people that we're sworn to serve. We only make money if you lose money. Now, we've heard about other towns bringing in video slots. We've got Addison, Villa Park, Glendale Heights. We've got a whole list that have brought it in. But we should also look at the list of towns that have decided that video slot machines will not help their business climate. Glen Ellen has rejected video slots, as has Wheaton, Downers Grove, Naperville, Elmhurst, Schaumburg, Hinsdale, Lisle. And now you've heard tonight from a Villa Park trustee who, even though he didn't quite admit it, he clearly regrets the move to bring slot machines into that village. And he noted that Lombard had been a leader. Now, we've led recently on good government measures, from tax and fee reduction to repealing and amending ordinances that hurt our businesses. I think we ought to lead on this issue too. Let's find more and better ways to help our businesses, and then let's help our neighboring towns that have adopted video slots to find more and better ways to help their businesses. Now we hear this thing about gambling parlors moving in. The members of the board were sent packets ahead of time on the harms of this sort of video slot machine. We see these gambling parlors that go into small storefronts. They're about the size of a Starbucks. And as we heard tonight, they're aimed at women. One of those studies showed us that 20% of those going into these gambling parlors become addicts. That number sounds awfully high, but if it's anywhere close, it's not something we want in the village of Lombard. We don't want folks' grocery money being spent on gambling. We don't want folks' Social Security checks being thrown away on gambling. Now, these aren't like casino boats or horse tracks or taking a trip to Las Vegas as well. Folks prepare for trips to those facilities, and most folks, we hope, carefully measure out the amount they're going to put at risk. Gambling at local pubs and restaurants is an entirely different enterprise than gambling at your track or casino. And it's certainly a lot different than a once-a-year Vegas night at your parish festival. As well, the point was made that only certain of our bars and restaurants have said they want video slot machines right now. But as soon as these machines come into town, every single establishment is then eligible. We as a village have absolutely no control. We can't figure out we want to place them here, we don't want to place them there. We don't have that control. As folks know, we've worked really hard over the last 4 years to revitalize our downtown, to create a space that is both business-friendly and family-friendly. We've fully funded our downtown organization, the Lombard Town Center. I was privileged to be the chairman of the Economic and Community Development Committee 2 years ago, so I had a front row seat to all that those dedicated volunteers did to improve our downtown. And during that time, our vacancy rate was cut in half. We rewrote our ordinances to allow additional outdoor dining opportunities. We've improved our downtown, but it's slow, tough work. It's been 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Imagine the day that a gambling parlor moves into one of our vacant downtown storefronts. That's not the kind of downtown, and it's not the kind of community we're trying to create. Now, we've heard tonight from some of our businesses, and I'm glad they're here. I want them to be here and to let us know about their concerns. But at the same time, no one stepped forward to rebut the many studies showing that this gambling is harmful to folks. We've heard about increased addiction, bankruptcies, divorces, and even suicides due to gambling losses. You know, I got a call from our village manager last year. The reason I got the call was because it was in my district. And it was actually right behind my house. But that a young woman, young Lombardian, had killed herself on the train tracks. She was a young mother. And I'll say that if there is even a slight risk of increased suicides, I couldn't live with myself. Someone took their life because we brought video gambling into Lombard. I urge my colleagues in the strongest possible terms to reject this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Trustee Whittington.
I understand the business climate. I want to play a fair playing field as well. And when we first talked about this 3 weeks ago, my first thought was, that might be something that's we should talk about. Since then, the last 2 weeks, I've gotten many emails, phone calls, correspondence from residents. One was neutral, and the rest of them were all absolutely negative. I would like to engage in a public opinion poll. Let's get it more. We've got the businesses. They already did the survey. The residents have not really had a chance to do a survey, and I'd like to push that forward if we possibly can.
No, we did an online survey as well.
I didn't see the results of that.
That was a couple years ago.
I'd like to want now, more recent.
Okay.
We don't need to do this tonight. We don't need this in 2 months. We don't need to do this, in 2 years. It's on the table for discussion, and that's what we're doing.
Trustee Fitzpatrick?
Okay. You ready?
Sure.
Okay. One of our village staff's responsibilities is to alert the board to new revenue streams whenever those opportunities avail themselves. And one of the village board's responsibilities is to drive policy by making decisions on how income is generated. And whether that be through taxes, fees, programs, or developments, we're charged with making those decisions as a condition of sitting on this dais. Staff is the incubator and the experts, and they forward ideas and concepts to be considered. Then the board gauges the desires and best interests of the residents. We expect and accept responsibility of our votes, yea and nay, long after we've casted our votes and even after we left the board. I'd like to offer a little background as to the heart and soul decision that led to Lombard voting to ban gambling in 2010. Please understand, any motion to approve gambling in Lombard must in turn mean lift a ban that was thoughtfully put in place in 2010. I was on the board along with Trustee Ware. We were on opposing sides of this issue back then, as we appear to be today. In 2009, video gambling was legalized in Illinois. Video gambling was legalized without rules in place as to how devices would be regulated. It's really hard to imagine why state officials would vote to legalize these machines without any regulations in place. But in serious desperation to generate revenue, to address Medicaid pension liabilities and shortages of education dollars, the climate was right for making poorly conceived policy decisions. And they wanted the gambling dollars, and they had enough votes to pass this without any rules in place. That's how short-sighted sausage gets made in Springfield some days. Gambling expansion from casinos into our neighborhoods was going to be the silver bullet that balanced the state budget. And more cynically than this, gambling was coming to your town if you did not adopt a gambling ban to prevent it. So back then, the local government had to work feverishly to get input, guess what the rules would be, and make a decision based on what? Nothing? And you may recall the first government to enact a ban was DuPage County. Unfortunately, that ban only affected the unincorporated areas of the county. I contacted a few of the public officials who initiated the ban to ask why, and their answer was because we polled voters and an overwhelming majority said they were against it. And that's all they needed to hear to ban it. Because the gaming license was tied to liquor licensing, it was then assumed that the liquor commissioner would also be the gambling commissioner, thus becoming the decision maker for where the machines would be placed. That was not a job our liquor commissioner and village president Bill Mueller was interested in having. I had a discussion with Bill at the time. He would be in the position of turning down some establishments and approving others. It would expose every decision to the charge of political favoritism, something Bill was not really looking forward to. However, because some members on the board had an interest in finding out what this meant to Lombard, we took the time and effort to survey the public.
Why? Because it meant a big change for Lombard, such as Mary May stated earlier. Some of our current board members were committee members and can recall the effort and organization that took place during that time analyzing the prospective situation. Every Lombard committee came back with either a recommendation allowing gambling or instituting a ban. We also polled residents with an online survey, with numbers of 52% for the ban versus 43% for gambling. A 9-point spread is a pretty sufficient determination to say folks in Lombard just don't want this in their neighborhood. With the answered survey, along with the majority of committees agreeing with the residents, we put the matter to rest. Lombard was making a conscious decision to not become a gambling-friendly community. So today, we know what the rules are that were not put in place in 2010. And here's what we know what the rules are. The liquor commissioner is not the gambling commissioner. The state of Illinois is. Lombard is not the regulator. The state gaming commission is. You have heard problems associated with control regarding non-home rule communities. Well, we are a non-home rule community. We have no local control. We do not need another situation in our village where we have no local control. If we lift the ban, the only way to stop the multiplication of gambling machines is to freeze the liquor licensing to prevent video poker machines. Talk about a backward way to do business, or reinstitute the ban. But that's like putting toothpaste back in the tube. Has the state of Illinois given us any reason to believe that these machines will be regulated properly? When I think about the potential for corruption in government bureaucracy, then add the word gambling to the additional responsibility, my confidence is shaken. A quote from Chicago Magazine in 2010, when federal agents arrested Governor Rod Blagojevich 2 years ago, interrupting what U.S. Attorney Patrick Fitzgerald called a political corruption crime spree, Robert Grant, head of FBI Chicago office, offered a succinct analysis of the day's event. If Illinois isn't the most corrupt state in the United States, he said, it's certainly one hell of a competitor. Which leads us to the question then, who are the winners and losers in gaming? With such a small percentage of monies going to business in our village, there are no big winners anywhere in Lombard. It's hard to imagine that any business in our village is at a competitive disadvantage because of these machines. Only one needs to look at where these machines are showing up to see what communities are trying to find an easy answer to some revenue issues instead of a good, sustainable one. If you believe that a member of this board or our staff can ensure you can get a gaming license to install video poker gambling machines in your business, you will be disappointed. You're better positioned if you have a friend on the Illinois Gaming Commission or know a lobbyist who does. A company called Black Hawk Restaurants is tied to the Oregon lottery system and just moved its Illinois corporate office headquarters to Oak Brook Terrace. If you look at the numbers, Oak Brook Terrace is getting $1,000 per terminal annually for its fee, mostly because Black Hawk can afford it. Next door in Villa Park is Stella's, and that's part of the Rivers Casino corporate structure. And the third one I find is called Lucy's, owned in part by two Springfield lobbyists. A change in Lombard's prohibition of gambling offers a welcome mat to the heavy hitters of gambling and the collateral damage that comes with that. And we could see it become a staple down Roosevelt Road, Butterfield Road, and downtown Lombard if every hospitality owner feels that they have to have everything the person down the road has. It's just the nature of the business, despite the fact diminishing returns are almost certain. And whether you want this in your neighborhood or not, you may not have a choice, and we won't either. And by the way, Lombard will only receive that $25 per terminal because we're a non-home rule community. So all this for $75,000 to maybe $150,000 income under the best and the most enthusiastic estimate, an amount that doesn't even cover the cost of the construction of one sidewalk. The cost associated with the harm it may cause socially is equally difficult to estimate. There will be people who suffer from these not-so-harmless devices. The harm is we just don't know yet. There isn't enough history 1 year of history in our neighborhoods. I'm not buying that. That's not enough time. Unintended consequences are the result of rushed government. We are a business-friendly board and a business-friendly community, but our first and foremost responsibility is to our residents. Good business means for the benefit and the good of the community as well as the business. This is not good for the community. I would argue that it's actually bad. If gambling was a healthy pastime, we wouldn't have this discussion. It is designed to make losers out of real people, and I don't think it's going to bring bad people to Lombard. I think it's going to make sad people out of Lombardians. This issue has been vetted appropriately, and the revelation of the rules has made it even less enticing. And whenever a vote comes up on this, I will be casting a no. In fact, absolutely not. I'd also like to make reference to this flyer that I've got in the mail recently. And yes, indeed, this is a cafe-style gambling institution. And yes, indeed, they are targeting women, middle-aged women, and they're placing them next to grocery stores. And the Black Hawk marketing business plan is that they will be next to Jewel, next to the Ultra, and there's one next to Pete's Fresh Market right now. That's where they're going. And that's the professional gambling institutions, not the local bars and pubs. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Trustee Fugel.
I'm going to take a couple fewer minutes than that, but I look at this whole issue being about choices. I've gotten several calls from people in the community, a handful of others that don't live in our community. I've seen some literature and gotten a couple calls from paid handlers. Those are the people whose job it is to discourage gambling. I've seen the minutes of 2 of our own committee meetings relative to a gambling issue where there were actually opposing views. In reviewing the previous survey from 2010, I noticed that there were several communities that were not about to allow for gaming, and however they now are, so they must have seen some redeeming quality. I also saw a list that staff prepared of restaurants that are probable participants, potential participants, and unlikely participants. I think between those 3 categories, families in our community could choose where it is they want to eat and drink and socialize and/or, participate in gaming if they like. The bottom line is I hope they continue to stay in Lombard, and, in either case, we still generate a reasonable sales tax from that. I'm really not at all interested in how much money the village will generate for this, because I'm really more concerned about some of our business owners who have struggled over the last several years, and this is an opportunity that may provide some potential relief. Last but not least, if all heaven comes crashing down, we still have the potential to reban. So for these reasons, at this point in time, I am going to support this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Fugel. Trustee Fultonevich?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not a big gambler, and I blame my grandmother because she used to steal quarters from me playing pinochle and gin. So that's probably where I'm a little more negative that way. So I see both sides of the issue. To me, I'm not a fan of it, but at the same time, as a government agency, I don't like big government telling businesses what to do, especially when it's legal. Blame the state of Illinois for dropping the ball on that. But for us to tell a business how to run their business, that's only going to fail. I think businesses know what's best for them, and at the same time, I think families know what's the best for families. I don't think up here we should be telling people what they can do with their money. I just find it kind of weird that we don't mind that the husband or wife is drinking at a bar all hours of the night, but make sure they're not gambling. If they're drinking all night, maybe the issue is they're drinking. With my job, I've never dealt with a gambler that's creating problems. I deal with alcoholics almost every day.
Do you have gambling in Oakbrook?
Legal? Not anymore.
Yeah, okay, well.
So, but it's around the area, it's surrounding. So, anyway, but, you know, alcohol to me is a lot bigger issue than gaming, and we seem to just, you know, bypass that, like that's not the issue. The other thing, if we're going to ban gaming or gambling, then we should do it right. Then lotteries should be out of town. Bingo is played almost every night somewhere. House games are always played. You know, I mean, everything we do, the Taste of Lombard, Lilac Time, there's always something going on. My church, I know, does it. We do split the pot every event we can. So if we're going to do it, you do it right, and you get rid of it everywhere. It's not okay to do it sometimes and not others. So I just don't like the government telling family, churches, and businesses what to do. I think Lombardians are smart enough to do what they want with their money because it's their money, not ours. And you know, if it's going to fail, then those businesses are going to hurt, and they won't even, you know, succeed. So I don't see that being an issue.
Thank you. Trustee Whittington?
Is there any interest in the board level to get a public opinion poll going again? And it's been 4 years ago.
Sure, why not?
I mean, to our residents, we work for them.
If I can answer. Thank you. I understand that concept, Trustee Whittington, but at the same time, we have gone through a couple of our committees. One committee said no, one committee said yes, which I think was your committee that said yes, unanimously, if I remember. The other thing is we have to remember we did a press release. We have been talking about this for the last, 90 days anyways on a board level, but for the last 30 days, different residents have called. If we don't, it would be, I'm sorry, excuse me, but we have to keep in mind we're up here to do what we believe is best for the citizens and residents, okay? It's impossible to get a tally on every concept or on every voting issue. We have to take the merits at hand. We have given people a chance to contact us. If you take a look at it, I might have had 10 to 12 calls. Out of 50,000 people in this town, that's minor. Okay.
We're not opening it up to say, please respond to this public opinion poll. Please go to our Facebook page. Please.
So we have to now beg citizens?
No, we're not begging. It's their right to be able to voice their opinion, Bill.
Okay. In my opinion, we still...
What's the rush?
I believe we have been discussing this long enough, and I'm going to, at 5:30 tonight, I saw a good business owner in town, and he said, always keep in mind the small business owner.
Of course.
That's what we have to do.
I understand that, and I'm pro-business. Anybody who knows me knows how pro-business I am. But we work for our residents, and they have a right to their opinions. I'd like to have that opinion. There's no rush for this. I think we have a couple of months to spare to get our residents, our bosses, involved.
I'm never against a public opinion poll, but at the same time, I might point out that, as Trustee Ware mentioned, 10 to 12 calls, to me, that's a deluge. I've never gotten 10 to 12 calls on anything except for that addition that some of my colleagues wanted to tear out in my district. That was the last time I got that many calls on an issue. So 10 to 12 calls is a pretty substantial margin. And I haven't heard a great public outcry saying, yeah, lift the ban. Again, we've got some of our business owners that we need to be responsive to, but again, I think we've got plenty of ways to do that. So I'm all for public opinion poll, but I don't know that it's necessarily going to change the attitudes of the folks up here.
I would hope if it changes what we perceive, it would change our attitude.
I mean, we have a public opinion poll every 4 years for each of us.
I was about to say that.
Thank you, Peter, for saying that. That's the ultimate public opinion poll, is when you put your name on that ballot, and if people don't agree with how you voted and how you acted, then you're gone. I understand what you're saying about the public opinion poll, but don't you start sliding down a slippery slope on that, because what's the next topic we need to all have a public opinion poll on? I don't really agree with that. But does anyone else have any other comments before I make a few of my own? Trustee Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, and, you know, we're up here all the time supporting business, and we've changed a lot of ordinances to make life a lot easier and swifter and less expensive for businesses in town. But now what we're talking about is changing a culture of Lombard, the Lilac Village, of Lombard, the family-friendly village, of Lombard, the place you want to raise your family, the place you want to go to the park. And you're bringing gambling institutions to Lombard, and it's not just a couple of machines. It's the gambling industry is coming in. And once they are eligible for whatever zoning that's in your town, you cannot turn them down now. They get a liquor license, they automatically qualify for a gaming license. They all automatically get to apply for a gaming license. You don't get to say, we're done getting gaming license. You don't get to say that. We can't control this. It can get quickly out of control, and we are a very high profile. We have great corridors. We're very enticing. We do extremely well getting new restaurants and new businesses in town because we have Butterfield Road, North Avenue, Roosevelt Road. We have great spots. It could get very, very quickly out of control with us. I don't think our residents are interested in that kind of lifestyle. Yes, it's important to have a town that the people want to have. And yes, we already did a public opinion poll, and a 9-point spread is pretty significant of those responding. Those that were interested enough to respond, responded. That's what opinion polls are. You can't just go on what some business owners are requesting all the time, because we're here to serve the people. We are not a broke village. We have plenty of money in reserves. We have sales tax dollars coming in quite steadily now. We're doing well enough to not have to resort to some other means of need of income, like these gambling machines.
Anyone else? I want to give everybody ample time to speak their piece.
Break the tie, Keith.
Well, it looks like that might be the case. I've heard both sides. Much like all of you, I have had...
You're not Judge Wapner here now. Come on.
No, I won't go on and on, believe me. I just have a few bullet points. There's pros and cons to this issue. I've been up to establishments that have machines in them, from McHenry County to Oak Brook Terrace, Villa Park. I personally haven't witnessed any fights, massive losses. What I have experienced was a group of people or a couple sitting there, again, $10, $20, having a couple of beers or a couple of drinks and enjoying themselves. You know, I think the argument would be a lot different if we were an island here and that we would be the only game in town, no pun intended. But as our friend from Villa Park will attest, Villa Park, Oak Brook Terrace, I believe Addison, you know, I ran as a small business owner. So when I see my colleagues out here, I feel for you. I think unless you are a small business owner, you have no idea, especially in the bar or restaurant business, just how much regulation goes on from the state, the feds, the health department, and it's difficult. And in this economy, it's even more difficult. And this, in my opinion, isn't about, Laura, you're absolutely correct. It's not about generating income for the actual village. I'm looking at it as generating income for our small business owners. I also want to touch on that again, in my opinion, this idea that once you put the machines in, instantly you're making people addicted to gambling. I really, you know, I come from a psychology background from Elmhurst College, and I had some education on addiction, and I really have a tough time that if I was to walk into Capone's and play a machine, that somehow something through that machine is going to change me and make me addicted to gambling. I just have a hard time with that, and that's not taking nothing away with addiction and people that have problems with that. I do encourage that if the ban gets lifted and we do allow gaming, I would be a strong advocate that once the first machine goes in, we set a 1-year timetable on that, and we completely revisit everything. The revenues, the police calls, how much staff time has been involved, if any, from the village. You could look at it as an experiment and let the business owners know before they sign up that this is a 1-year experiment, or however long it takes, however long the board wants to put on there, that we do revisit it, that it doesn't become this wild 7-headed snake that's out of control. I know for one, I won't sit here and let Lombard become Pottersville, and I would be watching it very, very, very closely, very closely. Another thing what we should look at is that if the ban gets lifted and we do adopt it, that this is a choice for businesses to make. This isn't a mandate. You know, folks might look at it when it all is said and done and say, you know what, this just isn't financially worth it for me. I really don't have the space in my establishment. This is just to give businesses a choice. That's what I'm talking about. And again, you know, it's hard for me sometimes to not sit up here after 30 years of being and running and owning my own business, not to feel for our small businesses and our large businesses who might opt to take it. So I would be supporting it, and that's about all I have to say about it right now. Trustee Ware.
Thank you, President Gennaro. At this point, I'd like to make a motion that we lift the banning on the gambling gaming, and ask staff to start looking.
Point of order, please. Point of order. Sure. I was instructed that this was informational only a discussion, that no votes would be taken tonight.
That was...
Yes, that was what my understanding was of this meeting.
I think a trustee can bring a motion to the table after discussion, which we have had. Is that correct, Mr. Baer?
Well, we cannot approve it tonight, but you can give staff direction to bring something forward at a future meeting.
Yes, that's all I'm doing. I'm asking staff to draw up an ordinance to review this at a future meeting.
So the bans, you know.
To lift the ban.
A motion on the ban of it or anything.
Well, I guess we would have to lift the banning to review that ordinance, wouldn't we?
Staff would have to prepare if you want an ordinance put on a future agenda by staff that would repeal the ban, that direction can be given. You just cannot repeal the ban this evening because there is no ordinance on the agenda.
Okay, so now I make a motion to ask staff to draw up an ordinance to do that.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Fugel. Any more discussion?
Staff would have a question relative to that.
I'll say.
Amongst the few.
I'll say.
Mr. Mayor, you had also commented on your desire to, or suggestion that some review be put in. Should any language, does the board want to entertain any language to that? And I would also say that part of the staff research on this would also include working with Bill Heniff and Tim Sexton relative to application forms for the license, any code issues that would go into there too, which beyond just the village attorney preparing an ordinance, there's some other loose ends that would have to be buttoned up. But relative to the policies question you stated about review, that would be helpful to know.
Okay. Trustee Fulton-Evans?
Yeah, on that point, I would love to do, if it goes through a review process, because the year, like you spoke of, once the first machine, if it would go in, to review it after a year, because, hey, I mean, we all make mistakes. Maybe it was a terrible idea, and we review it in a year and we get rid of it, or mistakes were made on the other end, and it was a good decision, and we keep it. I think a one-year review would be beneficial, if it went through.
Trustee Fitzpatrick, did you?
I would really prefer to move this to the meeting in June. I believe it's the second meeting in June. And give the public some time to digest this. They've had 2 weeks. We have a full house in 2 weeks' notice. I'd like to give them another month to think about this, see some newspaper articles, and get a chance to maybe call you a few more times, Trustee Ware.
That's fine. Excuse me, President Genario. If we think about it, it's all we're doing. This still isn't approving the gambling.
Exactly.
So all we're doing is asking staff to move forward with the review of it to draw up some kind of ordinance. So the public still has the next month or two to call me, and I'm okay with that.
That's sufficient. Thank you.
So we had a first by Trustee Ware. Oh.
What meeting is this to come back at?
We won't meet on the first meeting in June, which would be, I think, June 5th. So at the earliest, it would be June 19th. And I do think it would take some time for us to do that and make sure we distribute it to the board members for the review, because while maybe not every board member is supportive of it, they still have a right to look at the policy questions that come with it.
I think so.
Any other questions, Tom? No. Okay. We have a first by Trustee Ware, second by Trustee Fugel, and Janet on a roll call.
Trustee Ware.
Aye.
Trustee Whittington.
No.
Trustee Fugel.
Aye.
Trustee Fulton-Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Breen.
Hell no.
Trustee Fitzpatrick.
No.
President Genario.
Yes. Okay, that wraps things up tonight. I want to thank everyone for coming out. We appreciate it. And happy Lilac time.